Welcome to the Sellosophy Podcast. Why do we call it Sellosophy? Because it's the combination of the word sales and philosophy. I am extra excited today because I get to invite a friend of mine who is the GOAT of all things having to do with nutrition, and he's going to prove it to you in our conversation today. Ben Azadi, welcome, my friend, author of Keto Flex, founder of Keto Camp, health detective. You're known for so many things, keynote speaker. Longtime friend too. I have the ability to actually use that title as well because you and I go way back. And I just want to say welcome, give you a minute to say hi and add anything else I missed there.
Carlos, I'm excited. I know this is like just talking to an old friend here. We have a great history, which we'll get into in a little bit, but I love what you're doing. It's an honor to be on your show. As you mentioned, I'm very much involved in the health and wellness space. I would say out of all the hats that I wear, the number one hat I would categorize myself as a teacher. I just love to learn and teach and learn to teach. And that's my hope for today's conversation, to teach as much as I can to help your audience just crush it with sales and just feeling amazing at the same time and scaling their business and their life.
That's right, man. And so often, we don't pay attention to how nutrition can impact, not only our mental game, right? Like our mindset to be able to kind of show up and be fully present to the body of work that we do and performance overall. I mean, yeah, we talk about sales, and sales it requires a lot of interaction. It requires a lot of interpersonal skills, but in order to be ready to be present, the way that you nourish your body also affects your mental game and your energy and all these other facets. So I'm excited to dive deep into it. And that's the theme of today, right? How do you nourish your body and your mind to perform with clarity? So in the world of sales, I want to kind of kick it off with this question. Actually, before we do, let's talk about how we met. So this is a cool story. I'll share my side of it and then add any details that you think would be helpful. So I'm standing outside Fort Lauderdale to go to a live concert to go see Young the Giant with my sister and a group of people. And you were kind of like super friendly behind us in line. And you just kind of just started having conversation. Hey, you're here for the concert and what do you do? And here's what I do. And I remember your company's name back then was Shred Fat. I remember that. And then I think from then and there, we talked about other music influences and you talked about the Killers. And of course, anyone who starts looking up Ben, you'll see that he's a huge Killers fan and has stories about the Killers and, going on tours and watching them and all that good stuff. But I just remember you were so friendly and you had such amazing energy. And to this day, I see that, that drive and that energy and your passion also for wanting to help people. And actually you have a mission, right? I think your mission was, I don't want to butcher it, but you want to help 1 billion people get healthier. Yeah, forgive me if I said it wrong, right?
That's right. Yeah, educating 1 billion people. Yeah.
That's right, man. And so anything you remember about that day in particular that stood out to you?
Yeah, no, I remember that day. We were in Fort Lauderdale about to see Young the Giant. We were in the queue waiting to be let in. I believe I was with my friend Debbie. At that time, she was coming with me, and we just started having a conversation. And you told me your favorite band is Phoenix.
That's right.
I also am a big fan of Phoenix, and you told me how much you love them, and I talked about the Killers, and we've kept in touch ever since then. But not only that, we didn't just keep in touch. Like we developed a relationship where, we started to play, recently basketball, but also, with the Shred Fat company that I had, we did some excursions here in Miami Beach where we did some training. I remember that, right? Your cousin showed up too, a group of us, did some sprints on the hill there, the little sand hill. And then we kept in touch. You were working with the company at that time, and you've transitioned more to an entrepreneur status now. And I love seeing your progression. We talk about music, we talk about basketball. You have the Heat hat on, and we're both from Miami. So it's just cool, man. It's cool to have the conversation. And I love that it started, what was that, 10 plus years ago? Yeah, many, many years ago.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. And where we are, and just love that we're both growing in, although different spaces, but still growing as humans and growing our mindset. And we're so into that same flow of how to live a meaningful life and make meaningful connections along the way. So let's transition into a question about, sales professionals, how can they benefit from understanding the connection between nutrition, mindset, and productivity? Like if you could go into a little bit of science behind, how does nutrition affect energy and just all these other aspects of being able to perform?
Yeah, it's a very important question. I mean, let's start here. The bigger the vision, the more energy required. You want to scale your business, you want to get on more sales calls, you want to close those calls. It requires more energy. And what helps with energy is obviously your health. So the body has systems to produce energy. It's called the mitochondria. We learned about that in a biology class. The mitochondria produce energy. That is true. It produces about 90% of the energy that we produce. A healthy person has healthy mitochondria, meaning they have healthy energy levels, and the brain has the highest concentration of mitochondria. So if you have healthy mitochondria, the brain is going to function better. So you're able to be more creative, more resilient, more focused. You're able to recall people's names, make it more personable. All of this is so important for building relationships and having productive sales calls. If you're hurting and in pain and have brain fog, you're not going to be able to achieve the type of sales and scaling ability for your business and your company that you want to achieve, because you're going to be focused on the back that's bothering you, or you forgetting that person's name. Now, what can you do to get that person's name? You're going to be thinking about something else. So when you're healthy and focused, it's so easy to just go into a conversation, have those sales calls, close that person if it's a right fit, and have the energy to do this over and over and over. We know that sales is Grant Cardone says, sales is a contact sport, right? You got to make a lot of contacts, got to go through a lot of, consultations and calls. And the better you get, like the way you teach it, Carlos, of course, it requires a little bit less than the amount that you would do before, but energy has to do with all of that. And the food you put in your mouth determines if your energy is going to be optimal or if it's going to take energy away from you. For example, if you're consuming a ton of processed carbohydrates and vegetable oils, it's going to take energy away from you. If you're eating frequently, it takes a lot of energy to digest food. It's going to take energy away from you. So when you just make some nutritional shifts and eat more healthy fat, healthy protein, lower your carbohydrate intake, eliminate things like snacking, you allow your body to have optimal energy levels and focus, and that's going to only help you with those sales calls and just with your day-to-day life.
Yeah, and there's this weird thing that happens, for some people maybe who practice it, which is fasting, right? That in fasting, there's possibly an interpretation that when you're not eating, you can't show up to be your best self. But I don't know if there's a science behind this, but I know that I have someone who I know very close to me who does fasting, and he doesn't eat until he's done with the work. And he explains to me that it kind of puts him in this like hunter killer mentality, survival mode or something. Not sure if you can maybe expand a little bit of that. And, is it better to work while fasting or not? Or, what are the choices there?
Yeah, so your friend is exactly correct. When I'm speaking on stages and speaking in the afternoon or in the evening, for sure in the morning, I'm always in a fasted state because of that. More focus, more clarity, puts you in this state, because here's what happens from a scientific standpoint. When you're in a fasted state, let's say you're 16 hours with no food, only water, the cells in your body, the innate intelligence, which is the inner physician in your body, starts to think, whoa, we must be going through a famine. This person, the body, we haven't eaten anything in 16 hours. There must be a famine. The body doesn't understand that we could hit a button on our phone and get, Uber Eats delivered to our door or go to the supermarket. It doesn't get that. We're hardwired for the old school. So we automatically think, the body thinks we're going through a famine. So what it does, it floods the body full of energy. And it does that via these hormones called counter-regulatory hormones. And just to make it simple, when you fast, you lower the hormone insulin, which is very important for fat loss, but these hormones run counter to them. So they go up as insulin goes down. It's an inverted relationship. So these hormones include cortisol, a human growth hormone, adrenaline. This is the body's way of literally pumping it full of energy and resources so it could stay focused, alert, and energized, so it could go out there and hunt and kill to stay alive. But thankfully, we don't have to do that. So we could use all of the energy, all the focus, all the resources the body is giving us to just crush a sales call, or in my case, crush a lecture I'm doing, or just feel damn good. So when you eat a meal, you don't get those benefits because it takes a lot of energy away from you. When you think about the last time you had a feast like Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it was, the first thought, Carlos, is not, I'm so focused and energized, let's go get some work done. No, the first thought is, I'm fatigued, let's go sit on the couch, watch some sports, because it takes a lot of energy to digest a meal. But when you're in a fasted state, that energy is now diverted. It's called energy diversion. It's one of my favorite benefits of fasting. But here's the thing. It takes some time to build up this fasting muscle. If you are already eating so frequently and eating high carbs, and you hear about me talk about fasting and you give it an attempt, you might actually feel worse in the beginning as you're developing this fasting muscle. So if you're brand new to it, I wouldn't recommend just throwing in a 16-hour fast. I would start with 12 hours one day, 13 hours the next day, and build it up. And as your body adapts, then you're going to get all those benefits. So don't go into it too soon.
That's a good tip, definitely, because there's a lot of video content out there talking about the benefits of keto and fasting, and a lot of people just say, "Oh, I want an instant gratification, so I'm just going to jump right in." And they can probably either relapse and then just end up going double down on eating. Correct. Because of the body and the mind and all these things are just not trained or conditioned to be able to manage all that.
Yeah, it needs to be a muscle you train.
For sure. You talk a lot about inflammation and specific foods that cause inflammation. And I'll tell you, man, I've struggled personally. I've opened up to you, being vulnerable here, that a lot of things with like digestion that have caused inflammation, which again just kind of puts me in a bad mood. And then when I'm irritated, I don't want to do anything, right? And a lot of it's probably because there's foods that now I'm avoiding, or I would even say also liquids that you want to avoid that could cause inflammation. So could you maybe speak to what are the things that like people should immediately avoid that just gives not only short term but also just long term, difficulty or even health risk?
Yeah, and you said inflammation. It's very important. When your cells are inflamed, you're just not going to feel right. It could show up with digestive issues. It could show up with brain fog. It could show up many different ways, and those symptoms are not necessarily bad. I view those symptoms as actually a gift from your body showing you that you did something wrong. Fix it. It's the body's check engine light. But so many times we just ignore the check engine light, and then you have a third check engine light, a fourth check engine, so more symptoms occur. But it's not about chasing the symptoms, or we've been brainwashed to believe that symptoms are evil. It's actually a good gift from the innate intelligence to figure out what we did to create those symptoms. So for example, a lot of the common foods that we eat turn on those check engine lights, create symptoms. So the most common is going to be processed carbohydrates. So anything that comes like in a box or a packaged item, it's going to probably be processed carbohydrates, which also include things like vegetable oils, which are highly inflammatory, canola oil, seed oils, soybean oil. Those are going to be really, really, really inflammatory. But it's also things that you might not think are inflaming you. And that's going to be actually like too much cow dairy for some people. They will get inflamed from too much pasteurized cow dairy. There was actually a study that showed 75% of the adult population in the world cannot process pasteurized cow dairy as an adult. 75%. So there's only 25% of us who can. So making some swaps, right? Replacing processed carbs, if you're going to eat carbs, with real whole food carbohydrates. When we think about whole foods, it doesn't even require a nutrition label, like an avocado, a banana, a piece of fruit. There's no nutrition label because you see what you get there. But if you go and you buy like a box of cereal, there's a whole list of ingredients that we can't even pronounce, and those are red flags right there. So find items that have the least amount of ingredients, ideally items that have no ingredients because it's just what you see, like an avocado or a fruit. And then eating more, meat. And I know that's like controversial and maybe the opposite of what we've been taught, but we are meant as human beings to eat meat, fish, chicken, beef, lamb, eggs. Like we are going to actually process that better. You're going to have better digestion doing that. So we've been brainwashed to believe that they're actually bad for you, but in reality, they're good for you. So those are a few little swaps right there. And instead of cow dairy, I'm a big fan of like sheep dairy and goat dairy. So sheep cheese, sheep milk, or yogurt and goat. That's going to be much better than pasteurized cow dairy. So those simple little swaps right there, you'll notice a couple of those check engine lights start to turn off and you're going to feel better.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe in the show notes, we'll share some resources, how to learn more about, what are some of those foods that could cause harm, and maybe what are some good, simple swaps that you could make as well. So Ben, I want to shift away a little bit around, your expertise, which is nutrition, and a lot of that space. But I'm sure in your journey as an entrepreneur and running your own business, I want to talk a little bit about sales and a little bit your experience. And this is just a very open-ended question, but thinking about since you started this business, what is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned in terms of selling and sales? Like, what's the one that you're kind of like, wow, this one significantly changed my mindset, how to approach my business?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with. I used to have the thought process, I don't like selling, it's icky. It's just not for me. The truth is, like, if you don't make a sale, like, you're going to be out of business soon. It's the lifeline of your business. And it's actually your duty and obligation and responsibility to sell your services if you truly believe in what you have. If you truly believe it could help that person, you know all about this, Carlos. You teach us all the time. Like, if you truly believe what you have to offer is going to help that person, then shame on you for not influencing them, if you want to use a better word, to sign up with your services. Because for me, I'm selling health. I'm selling reversing diabetes. I'm selling, obesity, reversing obesity. If I don't make the sale, I have failed that person, and they're going to end up signing with somebody else or doing the same thing over and over, and they're going to actually hurt themselves or get worse health and maybe even die as a result. So I totally changed that around, and I look at it, if I don't get this person on board with my services, they're going to end up having a shorter life, and that's my fault. So if you really believe in what you're teaching and what you're selling, it is your responsibility to get it out to that person. Because the truth of the matter is that we're all selling every single conversation. Either you're selling your service or they're selling you on them not being able to afford it or whatever it is. Everything is a sale. Every conversation is a sale. So we got to just make sure, if you are ethical and you actually believe in what you have, then that is something you got to get out there as much as possible. So for me, that was the biggest switch for me. For many years, I used to have an icky feeling about it. And then when I got clear on, okay, actually what I have is going to change their life, then it made it easy for me to sell them.
Yeah, that's huge, man. A lot of it is an internal mindset shift, right? Because sales back in the 80s, 90s, and as movies had portrayed them, had sort of that negative association with being gimmicky, car salesperson, manipulation and all that stuff. And that's not what sales really means, right? And if we just, going back to the concept of simple swap, if we just change selling as helping or as serving, then there's purpose tied to it. There's, your mission of wanting to help and educate a billion people, my mission of wanting to, significantly transform the way we help people make decisions so that they can live a long, fulfilling, purposeful life. Then all of a sudden our behavior changes, right? So it does have to start with our internal dialogue. We have to sell ourselves first, what the definition of sales is. And something that Phil Jones, who is the author of Exactly What to Say, and we talked about this offline, this certification process that he did, he's an incredible thought leader in that space. He says that his definition of selling is earning the right to make a recommendation. And I really love that.
That's good.
So there's just really all about finding all the right ways to position what it means to you. And I love that that's the journey that you went through, and having been able to overcome that, how it's significantly transformed how you portray yourself when you go to lectures, when you position your product, when you market yourself. You're mission driven. And so that gives you the full freedom to be your authentic self, and knowing that I love the opposite of, right? Not doing it. What does it do? Is an injustice to the people that you're trying to serve. So that's right on, bro.
Yeah.
All right, man. I want to talk about, you want to add something to that?
I was going to say, I love that quote that you gave about what the definition of selling is, the right to make a recommendation. So true. And if you actually have high integrity, like for example, I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching these days, but I open up 3 spots a couple times per year. So I sent to my email list a few weeks ago, hey, I'm opening up 3 spots. Here's an application form. Takes about 2 minutes to fill out, where I gather some questions to see if it's a good fit. And then I actually hop on a call with them, 20 minutes to see if it's a good fit. And I'm going through this right now. I'm going through a lot of these applications and seeing, I've gone on a few calls. I actually have one call after our conversation today. But on that call, like, I'm actually selling them, but they're actually having to sell to me too, because I'm telling them, hey, this is not a weight loss program. It takes a lot of energy and effort. It's going to take, we're taking supplements. And if that's not something that you're not committed to doing, if you're just interested, then I'm not going to be able to help you, right? So it's also important for that person to sell you, because I've told the person already in the call, like, this wouldn't be a good fit. I could see that you need some help, and here's some other suggestions for you that might help. But in terms of one-on-one, it's not going to be worth our time. So I think it's important to have that integrity and not feel desperate to get every single client just because you want to make a sale.
Goes back to, does it align with your mission? And, I'm sure that that's the second lesson that you've had to learn, is having to say no to someone. That's not an easy thing, right? Because we naturally, many of us, we're kind of born into situations where we're not really looking for conflict. We're not looking to make people feel bad. We are pleasers, right? We want to please, we want to help. And having to tell the bad news of, hey, if you're not committed to this, I don't think we might be a fit together. Not only is tough for being able to deliver the news, but then it's also tough because you're losing the business. Mm-hmm. But then that doesn't align with your mission if you're just going to take their money, if you know they're not going to get the results that they want, which could then also impact your brand image and your reputation, right?
Exactly. It's just going to lead to frustration. If you really feel like it's not a right fit, but you're doing it just to get the sale, it'll lead to frustration on both parties.
Right on. Great ad, man. I want to talk a little bit about, you're from Iran originally, or your family's background.
Parents, my entire extended family. First generation American, yeah.
And I'm from Venezuela, and there's a lot of immigrants, in the U.S. and the world, right, that operate with, when it comes to nutrition, going back to nutrition, that like there's all these outside influences, right, that sometimes could disrupt or interrupt, our health and diet. And so I was just curious, from your point of view, like how these cultural influences shape our relationship with food and nutrition, and how can we leverage these experiences just for better health? In some cases, like, how do we disconnect from it? How do we limit it? Because some of it could be like, oh, I feel guilty because, my mom made me an arepa, and I know that's full of carbs, and maybe the oil she cooked with is not the right. So like, there's all these conversations we need to have with our family too, because some of it comes from a good place, but others, the science doesn't tell us the same.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. It's a great question because it's very challenging. I know that's one of the more difficult things for myself. Having to like tell my mom, because my mom, and I know it's the same way with you and a lot of people listening. Like, our parents' way of showing us love is like feeding us, and even if it's not healthy food, it's like that's her form of like love and communication. And my mom is that way. She likes to make all these foods. So over the years, she saw how I got, really dialed in with my nutrition, and that's evolved. But even to this day, I have dinner with my mom every Thursday. It's our routine. I drive to her apartment. She makes dinner for me and my fiance every single Thursday, unless I'm traveling. And I do these crazy experiments. Like, for example, October, I'm going to be doing the carnivore diet for the entire month of October, which is just meat for 30 days. And I'm doing lab work and all these testing day 1 and day 30. And I've done this many times. So I let my mom know ahead of time, hey, I'm just eating meat. And she's like, what about broccoli? Can that be? No, Mom, just meat. What about like, I don't know, arugula? Would that be okay? No. So I have to have these conversations with her. She thinks it's weird, but she understands because I have the conversation. I set the boundaries, and I think that's important. And I also think it's important not to be so regiment and strict all the time too. It depends on how unhealthy you are. The more unhealthy you are, the more strict you need to be. But then you work on your metabolism and work on your health, then you have more flexibility. So I'm able to actually enjoy some things my mom makes, although it's not necessarily the healthiest thing, because I've done some work to kind of create some more gray area for me to do that, right? So I think the most important thing is to have that communication with the mom, with the parents, set some boundaries, and get really clear on your goals. And that if you're focused on your goals, it's going to be an easier decision to make when you have the temptation. Because you've heard it before, when your why is strong, the how becomes easier. Jim Rohn said it all the time. So get clear on why you're doing this and explain, like, Mom, I'm unhealthy, or Dad, I'm unhealthy. I have this going on. I don't want to go on medication, or I want to get off my medication. And these foods are just going to not allow me to get to those health goals, but I'll get there eventually and I'll enjoy your foods. So having that communication is going to be very important, because you're right. They're going to make things that are not necessarily healthy, but they love to give it to you.
And we skipped a very important detail as you shared that story. You reminded me of your kind of what got you into this in the first place, right? So you were not always healthy, right? You were
Correct.
obese,
Yeah.
and in some cases, this was affecting your mental health, right? And I don't know how deep you want to dive into that, but for those listeners that maybe are in a place where they could use that story as inspiration, what could you share a little bit around what made you want to make that change?
Yeah, I was obese for most of my life, as you said, physically obese, mentally obese, depressed, suicidal. It wasn't until 2008 that I got my act together. So my mom and my parents saw how unhealthy I was and how just how much I was hurting every day, being overweight, dealing with all this body pain. It affected every area of my life. I wanted to give up on life. That's how bad it was. So now I got healthy, and now my mom saw that. She respects the transformation, and she's seen me evolve and change, right? So seeing that transformation, she understands it more because she saw how much pain I was in before. So yeah, that is an important part of my story because my mom saw that I went through so much, being so unhealthy at such a young age, and she sees that what I do now works for me. So just seeing that change helps her get on board a little bit easier.
Yeah. And going back a little to philosophy, and I'm sure you're a fan of Donald Miller as I am, for Hero's Journey, you chose not to be the victim or the villain throughout that pain. You instead decided to be the hero and the guide, to help others overcome some of those challenges. So, I mean, your mission is tremendously needed and impactful, and you're doing amazing stuff, man.
Thank you.
So I got one last question for you, Ben, just so that folks can get more familiar with your work. What are some action steps? I would say, like, let's talk about immediate. There's like one thing they can change today that will make a significant difference in how they can improve their work performance when they show up to work on a day-to-day basis. And then maybe other ways that they can get in touch with you and learn more about if they want to go deeper into this work of keto, fasting, nutrition, how to work with you.
Yes. Okay. So I'll give your audience, let's see, 5 key
Hell yeah.
takeaways here. Okay. 5 action steps that will make all the difference with your health, your productivity, your relationship. So number 1 will be for the person who's on a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of screen time, like we are right here, taking some breaks throughout the day in between your meetings. So just go outside and get some sunlight will help kind of reset and recharge your energy levels and focus. It could be as little as 5 minutes, like in between those calls, or even taking some sales calls if it's a phone call outside. When you are outside, this is still tip number 1. When you are outside, make sure you're taking off your sunglasses and you're getting some sun through your eyes. That's the key. That's the first tip. Second tip is if you are doing a lot of screen time and there's a lot of artificial light around you, like I do, wearing something like I'm wearing here, these are called blue light blocking glasses. These are not prescription glasses that I'm wearing. They're filtering out the blue light, what's called junk light. And your brain, if you're not wearing something like this, your brain has to filter out all the junk light. And if you think about it, the analogy that I always give, it's like having 150 tabs open on your Google Chrome browser. Like that computer is going to run very slow. That's your brain having to filter out all of the light. But when you put on these blue light blocking glasses, it's like taking the 150 tabs to 2 tabs. It's going to run more efficiently. So your brain doesn't have to filter out the light. The glasses do. So get blue light blocking glasses. The ones I have on are from a company called Bon Charge. They're great. Third tip is to give yourself at least 3 hours of fasting before you go to bed. So no eating at least 3 hours before bed. One of the worst things you can do is eat and go to sleep because you're going to age faster. You're going to wake up with less energy and feel groggy, and you're not going to get good, deep, restorative sleep. So a good rule of thumb, 3 hours, no food before bed. Something that I tell my students is to brush your teeth after dinner because you don't want to brush your teeth twice. It'll help it make it easier to not eat something. Number 4 is going to be eliminate the snacking. If you don't want to practice fasting, that's cool, but don't eat throughout the day and graze throughout the day. You're going to get fluctuations in energy levels. It's going to decrease your lifespan. So at least, 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you don't want to do fasting, no snacking in between. And then that's what tip number 3. The 4th tip would be with your meals, have a heavy focus on protein and fat, which is going to prevent you from wanting to snack in between your meals. So make sure it's protein and fat focused, not necessarily carbohydrate focused. And the 5th tip would be to become really aware of those daily thoughts you have every single day. The average person has upwards of 60,000 thoughts per day, and those thoughts influence health or influence disease, depending on if it's a healthy thought or a toxic thought. So become aware of those thoughts. And if you notice you're in this place where you have a lot of bad thoughts, what Zig Ziglar used to call stinking thinking, then do some work to change those thoughts. I mean, the greatest ability we have as human beings is the ability to change our thoughts. And if you change your thoughts, you will change your life. Dr. Wayne Dyer used to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So just get really good at reprogramming that brain to take those toxic thoughts to beneficial thoughts, and you'll reprogram your body and your health, and everything else will come into play.
One thing, Ben, that you didn't mention that I was expecting for you to mention is the daily vitamin G. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's part of number 5, daily vitamin G. So I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, take this supplement every day, this vitamin G every single day. It's anti-inflammatory, helps with brain fog, helps with focus, helps with energy levels. Where do you get it, right? So they're looking on Amazon right now. Vitamin G, you can't find on Amazon. It's the practice of gratitude. It's a grateful heart, a grateful state. So I know it might sound woo-woo to some people, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of science that shows what vitamin G gratitude does. And that kind of goes hand in hand with those thoughts. You want to take those toxic thoughts and convert it into abundant, loving, grateful thoughts. So get your daily dose of vitamin G for sure.
Right on, dude. Man, this time literally flew by. It's been so exciting to be able to finally chat with you and educate my audience, and with the work that you're doing, it's amazing, seriously. And
Thank you, bro.
So if folks wanted to learn more about you, your keto camp, how to get access to more of the information, amazing information that you have, how can they get in touch with you?
Thank you, Carlos. It was great to have this opportunity. I appreciate what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I love that you transitioned and now you're a full-time entrepreneur changing lives. So thank you for this opportunity. My website has all my programs, so you could book a consultation with me. So my website is benazadi.com, benazadi.com. And you can learn more about me and learn about my programs and even book a 60-minute consult if that's what you want to do.
That's amazing, dude. And we'll definitely put some of those links in the show notes. Ben, amazing having you. Really appreciate you taking some time to educate the world a little bit more about how nutrition can impact their performance and their daily lives. And you're doing amazing work, brother. We'll keep in touch. Can't wait to go bowling with you soon.
So let's do it. Thank you, Carlos. It was a pleasure, brother.